to Joseph, saying, "Your father gave this command before he died. Say to Joseph, please forgive the transgressions of your brothers and their sin, because they did evil to you. Now, please forgive the transgressions of the servants of the God of your father." Joseph wept when they spoke to him. His brothers also came and fell down before him and said, "Behold, we are your servants." But Joseph said to them, "Do not fear, for am I the place of God? As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. So do not fear, I will provide for you and your little ones." Thus he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. This is the word of the Lord. So we finally come to the conclusion of the epic story of the life of Joseph. The ending is both hopeful and sad. The brothers are still terrified that Joseph will punish them for selling him as a slave when he was young. And they think the only reason why he's restrained his vengeance is because their father Jacob is still alive. But now that Jacob is dead, they fabricate a dying wish from father Jacob. The brothers know that what they did was evil. They acknowledge it, and they feel guilty, and they're terrified. And they know they deserve whatever punishment they're going to get. And I suspect the reason why Joseph wept is that he knows they are lying. After all this time, they still don't trust him. But instead of giving the brothers what they deserve, Joseph surprises everyone. It says something that is theologically profound. And his words reveal the heart of the work of God in the world. And I'll repeat, this is what he said. "Do not fear, for am I in the place of God? As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. So do not fear. I will provide for you and your little ones." And thus he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. And I want to zoom in even closer to a few words in particular in that passage. And here it is. I'll read it right now. "You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good." I want to repeat it. You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good. Okay, let's back up and let me give a little broad panoramic view of what God is doing here and how we even got to this point. This passage is a climax of the life of Joseph. And I wouldn't say arguably it is a climax of the entire book of Genesis. It's all been leading up in my mind to this one moment. And I won't, and I can't repeat all the events that led us here. You likely already know the narrative arc and a good bit of the details. But I'd like to remind us of what happened so far and what God's been doing in this world up till now. Again, I'll be quick about it. It'll be a quick panoramic view of what's happening. Let's go back to Abraham. God makes his covenant with Abraham. And he tells Abraham, "You will be the father of a great nation." And for this to happen, Abraham needs to take a giant risk, a huge step of faith. He needs to leave his home, the only home he's ever known, a big city, and follow God into the wilderness. Now, Abraham is the most unlikely candidate for this destiny because he and his wife Sarah are old and they are barren. But through God's divine intervention, where Abraham was 100 and Sarah was 90, they have their baby Isaac. Now Isaac grows up and marries Rebekah, and they have twins, Jacob and Esau. In the line of God's blessing, his covenant goes through Jacob. And Jacob had 12 sons. And Joseph was the second youngest son of Jacob. And Joseph was a favorite son of Jacob. And Jacob was not subtle. As a sign of his favoritism, Jacob gave Joseph a multicolored coat. It was essentially a massive, brightly colored, high-definition LED billboard that screamed, "Joseph is a favorite. Joseph is a best. He's getting the best blessing from Jacob. He's getting all the money, all the goodness that I can give him. And the rest of you brothers, you get whatever's left," which isn't much. Sorry, allergies. Weather's awesome, but it's attacking me. Give me a minute here. And so the brothers, burning with resentment and jealousy, they threw their baby brother into a pit with plans of murdering him. But what's a benefit of murder besides satisfaction? And you feel good. Instead, they had an idea. Instead, they'll sell him as a slave and get some money out of it. And they thought that was the last they'd ever see of him, and they could forget he ever existed. That little brat's gone now. Great. And now we're rich. Now, keep in mind, Joseph was 17 years old when he was sold into slavery. He ends up in Egypt, and he is a slave of the house of Potiphar. And Joseph does extremely well. He's promoted to become the second most powerful person in Potiphar's household. And aside from the fact that his brothers tried to kill him, and instead they sold him into slavery, his life is going pretty well. Until Potiphar's wife tries to seduce him. I'm conjecturing that Potiphar, well, he's rich and powerful, and so I imagine he's actually very old. And then it's not entirely absurd to conjecture that Potiphar's wife is young and beautiful and bored, because rich, powerful Potiphar is too busy being rich and powerful to pay attention to his young, beautiful wife. Rich, powerful old men, young, pretty wives, things don't change that much, apparently, in history. So Potiphar's wife sees Joseph working around the house all day, looking all young and handsome, and she thinks, well, that's yummy. And so Joseph repeatedly refuses her. As an aside, the reason why he refuses to sleep with Potiphar's wife is very interesting. Joseph tells Potiphar's wife he will not sleep with her because Potiphar has entrusted him with everything. Potiphar's been very good to him. Okay, so far so good. This is pretty predictable. Nothing out of the ordinary. But then Joseph says something really interesting and unexpected. His ultimate reason for not sleeping with Potiphar's wife is this. He says, and I quote, "How can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" Did you catch that? Joseph's refusal to sleep with Potiphar's wife is not about loyalty, obligation to Potiphar. It's not about the fear, the consequences of getting caught. And it's true, this would be a terrible thing to do to Potiphar. And Joseph acknowledges that. But the reason why he won't do it is because it's primarily a sin against God. I mean, I think that's really interesting. It is interesting. Because if Joseph's morality is based on his loyalty to Potiphar, and because of Potiphar's generosity, well, we might have a problem. I mean, hypothetically, what if Potiphar was a jerk? Would Joseph sleep with his wife then? Well, why not? If that was the case, he owes Potiphar nothing. And if, again, hypothetically, what if Potiphar's wife said, "Sleep with me, and I'll make you rich and powerful. I'll protect you. And I'll make sure Potiphar never finds out. She's never home anyway." Again, would Joseph sleep with her? Well, why not? If he's looking out for his own self-interest or looking to honor obligations, sure, why not sleep with her? But even if Potiphar had been a jerk, Joseph wouldn't do it because in his mind, and it's true, it's a sin against God. Joseph's ethics and morality, it's not what we call pragmatic, utilitarian. He's not weighing, what am I getting out of this? And Joseph's morality is not based on loyalty or paying back people who have been good to you in the past, who will likely be good to you in the future. I mean, that is the most basic, normal human way people understood morality and ethics at this time, even in our time. But Joseph is doing something radically different and revolutionary. This is what Joseph believes and how he's operating. It goes something like this. There is a good, and it is rooted in a world beyond this world. And it is not based on what I get out of it. What's good for me? What's good for you? What's good for my tribe, my family? This good comes not from this world, but from the transcendent God. It's a cosmic and timeless order that reflects God and his nature. And the good is God, and you must obey the good, regardless of what happens here on the ground or any pragmatic calculation of personal benefit. And it's not just brutal obedience to a set of impersonal cosmic laws that are out there. there is a trust in the goodness of the God behind the rules. If you look at David's words, he's not just obeying rules. He's following God. He's honoring God. And Joseph is smart. I mean, he must have known that by refusing her, there would be negative consequences. One way or another, it's likely she would have gotten revenge. And that doesn't affect his decision. Joseph will honor and follow God, not whatever's in his own self-interest, not loyalty to Potiphar. He will honor God. Okay, done with that aside, but back to the story. The wife does retaliate by telling Potiphar that Joseph attacked her. So Potiphar throws Joseph in prison. No trial, no investigation. And while in prison, Joseph befriends Pharaoh's cupbearer. Now, Joseph is gifted. He has been blessed by God. He can interpret dreams. And the cupbearer has a very odd dream. And Joseph predicts that he will be restored to his position in 3 days. And that happens. Then Joseph asks the cupbearer to remember and recommend him to the Pharaoh. His hope is, get me out of jail. And then the cupbearer forgets about Joseph for 2 years. And for 2 more years, Joseph is rotting away in a prison, not for doing nothing, but for doing the right thing, not sleeping with his boss's wife, or more accurately, for following God. But then Pharaoh has his own troubling dreams, and the cupbearer suddenly remembers Joseph's remarkable gift. And then Joseph predicts 7 years of abundance, followed by 7 years of famine, and Joseph is elevated. He is then the second most powerful man in Egypt, and he saves Egypt and the entire region from mass starvation and famine, and I trust you know the rest of the story. So let's fast forward. We find Joseph in this scene. He says to his brothers, again, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. Now, when Joseph said these words, he's getting towards the end of his life. At this point, he's the second most powerful man in the most powerful nation in the world. He saved an entire kingdom and region from starvation. He has got to be a national hero. He has got to be the most beloved man in this gigantic kingdom. He's also saved his family from starvation, and he's made arrangements for them to settle peacefully in Egypt and be left alone. His family is reunited. He is powerful, respected, and presumably ridiculously wealthy. He is a national hero. At this point, he can look back at the entire arc of his life, and he can put all the pain and the suffering on the one side and all the good on the other side. I can see that the good greatly outweighs all his personal suffering. He can also see now that the story's almost at the end, that God indeed worked it out all for the good. And I wonder if this is what he's thinking in his mind as a mature man towards the end of his life. I wonder if his internal dialogue goes something like this. If my brothers never sold me as a slave, then my life would just have been there. I would be the favorite son with a really colorful coat. But because of what they did, they tried to kill me, then they sold me instead. I became a powerful man managing the house of Potiphar. And that would have been fine. If nothing else happened, I'd be a very powerful manager in the powerful house of Potiphar. But Potiphar threw me in jail. And if Potiphar never threw me in prison, then again, I'd just be the manager. But because he did that, I rose to become the second most powerful person in Egypt. And I saved the whole nation from starvation. So then he's thinking to himself, see, it all worked out. It all worked out for the good. Pretty good. But only in retrospect can he see that every bad thing was a necessary stepping stone to the next greater thing, but only in retrospect. So he can say at that point in his life, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. What Potiphar meant for evil, what his wife meant for evil, God meant for good. What the cupbearer thought was just, he was a lazy bum. But still that all worked out for good. Eventually it worked out. But what must have been like in the middle of it all, when he's going through it all? What if we could make a line graph of the ups and downs of Joseph's life? When we first encounter him, again, he's a favorite son, and he has this really expensive coat. Well, that's a high. Then because of that, his brothers put him in a pit and sell him as a slave. That's a low. But because of that, he's second in command of Potiphar's house, another high. And then he's thrown in prison, low. But because of that, he becomes the second most powerful man in Egypt. And he saves millions from starvation, another big high. Again, so in the end, it all works out. But in the middle of it all, especially the low points, his life looks chaotic, disordered, random, meaningless, pointless. His life's nothing but a crazy zigzag all over the place. As soon as he rises and he starts building something good, he gets traction, he gets some momentum, and things start going well, it all suddenly crashes down on him. And then he's up again, and then he crashes down again. As soon as blessings are given to him, they're taken away and become curses. I could imagine at various points in his life, he might be discouraged, dejected, demoralized. When he's in a pit, waiting to be sold as a slave. What was his feeling? What was he thinking? He must be thinking his own brothers want to murder him. And instead, they sell him as a slave. Then years later, when he's doing well in Potiphar's house, when he was alone and it was quiet, and he had time to think, I wonder if he missed home. How could he not? He's a young man. He missed his mother, his father, maybe even those jerk brothers who tried to kill him. He must have asked himself late at night when he's all alone, what am I doing here? Oh yeah, my brother sold me, that's why I'm here. And when he's rotting away in an Egyptian prison because he would not sleep with his master's wife, what was he thinking? I did not sin against God. As a result, I'm forgotten and rotting in prison. So during his worst and lowest moments, Joseph's life could be seen as a series of betrayals. His brother, Potiphar, the cupbearer, he must have felt forgotten and alone by the people who should have trusted him, that he should have trusted the most. His brothers, that's family. Potiphar, he was a right-hand man. Potiphar trusted him, and Joseph never made a mistake. He made Potiphar rich. But Joseph asked the cupbearer for one little favor, just one favor. But he forgot. They all abandoned him. But I would imagine what would have stung them most was a fear that he was abandoned and forgotten by God. Where was God in the pit, in the prison? It's bad enough being betrayed by the people closest to you. But how do you deal with feeling like God betrayed you? That your life is spinning around randomly, all over the place with no direction. You're running around with no compass, no steering wheel. It's just zigzagging all over the place. I can only speculate about Joseph's inner emotional state. We don't know, the text doesn't say. I know how I would feel. And although we don't know his inner thoughts, we can see his actions. And what we can see is that he did not despair. Despair, that's an interesting word. It means a complete loss and absence of hope. It means completely giving up. Now, despair is different from discouragement. Discouragement could mean that your life is so hard and brutally punishing that you're worn down to a nub. You're hanging on by a thread, but you're still hanging on to God. You're still hanging on to hope in God. But the difference between discouragement and despair is sometimes paper thin. And again, with despair, you're just done, no hope. It will never get better. It's irredeemable. Despair is a conviction that there is either no God, or the God who is there has given up on you, abandoned you, so you give up and abandon God. A few years ago, I was having lunch with a friend, and my friend is Roman Catholic, and I really enjoy his company for a lot of reasons, but one thing I like about him is that we share so many beliefs and goals and loves, but he would articulate theology and Christian faith with vocabulary and a framework that was, well, different from my own. And we were having lunch together during an extremely discouraging season for both of us professionally. Things were looking bad. We were talking and lamenting. I talked about the hopelessness of the situation we found ourselves in. And what can we do next? What can be done? And I felt like nothing. We're done. This is over. It can never get better. Everything we try will fail. And he told me in a gentle and a very unjudgmental way that we can't despair. You can't despair. He says, you sound like you're despairing. That's wrong. You can't do that. And I said, why? And he told me, because his despair is a mortal sin. I never heard it put that way before, so I asked him to explain why despair was a mortal sin from his perspective. And we're not Roman Catholics here. I'm not, and I won't get into the differences between mortal sins and venial sins, but for our purposes here, let's just say that a mortal sin is really, really bad. And despair is a serious sin, according to him, and he's right. Because the despair is to deny who God is. It's to reject God's goodness, mercy, and faith-keeping. Being discouraged by circumstances is inevitable. We're all going to get discouraged because life can be crushing. Life is crushing. But if we believe in God and who he is, we do not despair. Because we hope and trust and expect the goodness of God. God loves you, he sees you, and he's ordering your life. So we cannot despair. And Joseph doesn't despair, even when he's in the pit. But back to Joseph, in the middle of the horrible circumstances, again, he did not despair. Again, he was likely miserable, but he hoped in God. Even when there was no evidence that anything good would happen, God was still God, and God was with him. And so it would appear that Joseph persisted. He did not give up hope. He didn't despair. But how? How could he not despair? Why did he continue to believe and hope? What is easier to believe? Well, what's easier to believe at the end of his life is a lot harder to believe in the middle. When he's in the pit, literal and figurative. Why didn't he give up on God? I think I might. I don't know. I'm not him. I wasn't there. It's hard to believe he didn't just give up on God. Why didn't he do it? I honestly don't know. The simple answer is, I think he was blessed with supernatural grace. Joseph is a special and unique guy. Go back to his rejection of Potiphar's wife. He has this unique and radical understanding that we must follow God and his ways are above and beyond this world. Where did he get that from? It's really strange. No one in this time period talked that way or thought that way, as far as I know. Aristotle would articulate something like this sort of ethic, pursuing the good for its own sake, or what he calls a eudaimonia. But he lived 1,000 years later. So who taught Joseph that you're supposed to follow God, follow the good, without any utilitarian or pragmatic consideration? Who taught this to Joseph? I think God did. So Joseph's a unique and special guy. He's not like anyone else. But how about us? What can we learn from Joseph's life? Can you relate to Joseph? Your ups and downs, your reversal of fortunes, feeling betrayed by the people who you trusted, your family, other Christians? Or do you feel abandoned by God? You get this nagging feeling that God's just completely forgot about you. He was with you for a little bit, but he lost interest. And now he's just not there anymore for you anymore. Your life gives evidence that God's just given up on you or just forgot about you or neglected you. If you've had that, if you've been like that, or you are that way right now, that's what you're going through, how do you not despair when things just seem awful, random, pointless? When none of the events of your life seem to add up to any kind of whole, nothing is coherent. When you're trying to follow God as best you can, and though imperfect, we're sinful, but still you're trying. But things seem to explode in spite of your faithfulness, in spite of your earnest intent, in spite of your planning and trying to be wise and thoughtful. Because of your faithfulness, things seem to explode in your life because you're faithful, not because you're sinful. How are you supposed to believe that your life has a plot, that God knows what he's doing, that God's paying attention, again, when all the evidence points to the contrary? That must have been what Joseph was feeling at the low points of his life. There's a word I want to dwell on and meditate on. It's called providence. It's one of those big churchy words, one of those words that gets tossed around a lot in church and almost nowhere else. Providence. You ever hear that word again? You ever hear that word outside church? Probably not. We only hear it among Christians. Simply put, providence means God's in charge. God knows what he's doing, and God is controlling and coordinating all events, not just of your life, but all the world. He is a composer again, conductor of a beautiful, complicated symphony. And all you're doing is playing your little piccolo and playing the notes that have been given to you, but you have no idea how it all fits together. But God does, and God's being intentional. He's planning it all out, and he just gives you the notes that you should play on your one instrument. When you think of the life of Joseph, think providence. What the brothers meant for evil, God used for good. So think about the life of Joseph. Meditate on it, dwell on it. Look and marvel at what God can do, what he did do. No matter how evil the world is, and it is indeed evil, God can take it, mold it, use it, appropriate it into something good. Again, the brothers were evil. Potiphar's wife was evil. Potiphar was evil. They intended evil. They were malicious. God took all that and he saved lives. And there's no way that Joseph could have possibly known in the pits, in the middle, in the lows, in the valleys, how this was all going to work out for the good. But it did. And we are in the middle of it. God knows what you have been through and what you're going through right now. You have no idea what God is doing with your life. But we are called to believe that he's doing something good. Here's another big churchy word that we don't use very often outside of church, but we only use in church. Redemption. He is redeeming what you're going through right now, or what you've done what you've gone through in the past. And nothing is random. I'd like to point something out now. We think that the resolution of the story, according to the way it's presented in Genesis, is the end of Genesis. The part I read at the beginning of the sermon, it's a big reveal at the end of an excellent movie. And you're thinking, aha, that's what this is all for. That's the answer to the mystery. It all worked out for saving lives and the reunion of the family. The evil was horrible, but it was all worth it. Okay, that's kind of the feeling you get when you read just Genesis. And now Joseph can finally know what it was all for. God was always there, hidden. But until now, he could not see what God was up to. But now it's all revealed. Well, yes and no. It's true. What the brothers meant for evil, God meant for the good. And Joseph finally knows the truth and knows worth it. But no, it's only the thinnest sliver of the truth. Joseph knows, but he really, really doesn't know. It's a truth, but it's only a tiny, tiny part of the truth. Why did God call Abraham? So he could be the father of Isaac. And Isaac led to Jacob. And why Jacob and not Esau? Jacob is just terrible. Well, I don't know. That was the will of God. Then through a series of insane events, Joseph saves his brothers, including Judah. And then about 1,600 years later, Jesus is born from the line of Judah. Had there been no Joseph, there'd be no living Judah. No living Judah, then no Jesus. What was this all for? All the stuff about Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and all the crazy life of Joseph. Had this all been to save the Egyptians from starvation? Yes. But also Jesus. That's why God did all this intervention, all this coordination, all this plotting, planning, all the ups and downs. Why did he do it? For Jesus, to lead to Jesus. And this leads to you right here, right now, thousands of years later. What you meant for evil, God meant for good. Joseph thought that was the end of his life, and he finally understood what all the pain, suffering, and chaos was for. And he was right. That was true. And yet he had no clue what God was really up to. There's no way he could have comprehended what God was cooking, even if he told him. It's beyond the scope of his mind and imagination, and how his life played a part in God's grand work. He could never understand how it all works together. Perhaps you're going through something right now, or you have in the past, and you're angry because you want to know what that was all for. And as a result, you're on the edge of despair, or you've been in despair, the edge of it. Or you look back at some horrible season in your life and you want to ask God, what was that for? Why was that necessary? Did you have to put me through that? And maybe now, years later, or maybe years now, or maybe even years later, you'll be like Joseph and you can look back when all the dust settles. And maybe if you're blessed, you can look back and see how it all ties together. You can see the redemptive purpose of those dark days, how it all worked out for the good. Those horrible things in your youth or years ago, how that all worked out well. That may or may not happen. There's no promise that we'll ever come to that aha moment in our earthly lives like Joseph did. But even if you did get to that sort of revelation, your big aha, I get it now, it all worked out. Even if you have that moment, we're all like Joseph at best. The best we can do is be like Joseph. Like Joseph, we can never know the full scope of what God's doing in the world and how your life fits into his plans. Our own vision is so small and narrow compared to the size of what God's doing. So we'll know at best partially, but we'll never really know, at least not in this world. I wish I could tell you clearly how God will take the evil and pain you've experienced and endured in your life and make it into something good. I wish I could tell you how he will redeem it and use it. But I can't. And even if I could tell you, we'd never understand it anyway. And the best we can know, to the extent that we know it all, is only partial. What I can tell you for certain is our lives are tied up in the cross. Jesus took all the evil and wickedness that the world could throw at him, and he took it into himself. And he took death and transformed it into life. He took sin and turned it into holiness. He took shame and he turned it into glory. And on the cross, he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. He could have just as easily used the words of Joseph and looked at those people who were killing him, and he could have said, what you intended for evil, God intends for the good. And on the cross, God transforms evil into good. And in a mysterious way, that we cannot fully comprehend, we are wrapped up in that cross. Our lives are subsumed into the cross. And in the process, God transforms our pain and turns it into the good. And so we have to live with that mystery. And with that mystery, we do not despair. We might be discouraged, but we don't despair. Instead, we hope. Let's pray. Father, your ways are mysterious. We say that all the time.